You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
Mark, I have a stack-waddy game for you.
Hurrah. Always keen.
With a financial twist here, I have before me the names of 6 musical acts who've all lent their names to credit cards.
Oh, okay.
But only one of them I've made up. Okay.
Yep.
And these are the names: Beyoncé, Michael Jackson, Kiss, the Wu-Tang Clan, the Sex Pistols, and U2. Beyoncé, Michael Jackson, Kiss, Wu-Tang Clan, the Sex Pistols, and U2. Which one of those
Sex Pistols is so ridiculous, it has to be true.
It is.
It just does. Beyoncé, you would imagine that's precisely what she'd do.
She did.
I'm saying, and the Wu-Tang Clan, again, is so preposterous that I'm inclined to think that happened too.
It did.
Okay, so we're now, U2 wouldn't be the sort of thing they ought to do, but it's bound to be the kind of thing that they did do. So I'm saying U2 did as well.
No, they didn't.
Oh, they didn't. Okay, so it's Michael Jackson and Kiss.
They're the ringer. So Beyonce had a credit card with American Express called the Beyonce credit card. Michael Jackson had the Michael Jackson Visa card launched in 2005. Kiss had a co-branded credit card with Bank of America called the
brilliant.
Kiss Visa card. Wu-Tang Clan, yes, they had a co-branded credit card called the Wu-Tang Clan Stockpile card. And in 2015, Virgin Money launched the Sex Pistols credit card, which you could either have designed with Anarchy in the UK or Nevermind the Bollocks. You could take your choice. It didn't go down well.
How popular was that?
It apparently didn't go down well because people who liked the Sex Pistols didn't like to feel that they'd ever do that kind of thing. Of course, that's precisely the kind of thing that they would do.
It's like advertising butter. It's exactly the kind of thing they do.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
so U2, no, to be fair, if U2 had done that, there would have been a massive outcry.
Yeah, well,
but although it's the kind of thing you'd think they might be tempted or certainly would have thought about. Oh, well, that's good. Okay, you win.
So listen, it's 50 years ago, pretty much this week, since the release of Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells. Do you remember Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells?
I remember that coming out so vividly because, I was at college at the time and all the little cafes, little restaurants that we used to go to all played it non-stop. It was actually, you went round to people's houses, didn't you, and just listened to it in its entirety, in silence.
I had a copy.
Side one, side two.
I had a copy because that was the great thing, that it was a sustained piece of music, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they got really good reviews. Oddly enough, it's really interesting that John Peel wrote about it in, I can't remember which newspaper.
Probably Sounds, it would have been.
No, I think he wrote about it in one of the heavies. And,
right.
And said that it was it was completely. He wrote about it in the Listener. Yeah, the Listener.
Oh, right, okay.
And he played it in its entirety on his radio show. And he said it covered new and uncharted territory. And he hoped that there would be a performance of it and that Radio 3 would carry it. Of course, there was a performance
There was a performance, which was...
But it took a while, didn't it?
It did, and it was all to do with his stage fright, wasn't it? Because Mike Oldfield, let's not forget, was about 17 when he wrote it, I think, and I think 19 when it came out. So probably was recording it around 18, 19. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well,
didn't he play all the instruments?
He was a member of... Kevin Ayers' group, wasn't he? The Whole World. And he was the young genius guitar player. And when they broke up, he got out of it. Kevin Ayers gave him a tape recorder. And I think it was a multi-track tape recorder, which in those days was a really rare thing,
Yeah.
People would, go through their whole lives and never have access to a thing like that. And it was having this that gave him the opportunity to just lay down some, start with a bass part or whatever, and then put guitars out the top of it and slowly build it up. And played it to a variety of record companies who said, well, it's quite nice, but we can't see where it would fit at all. And then he got this job at the... Richard Branson had just opened the Manor, which was the recording studio in the country. And he got a job there as a kind of helper out in T-boy, T-pop, whatever.
And used all the downtime, didn't he?
Used all the downtime. He would record all night, you know. And of course, when you did those kind of records in those days, you know, there must have been very rudimentary kind of counters on tape machines, but there wouldn't be the kind of precise digital readouts that you had nowadays. So you knew exactly where to drop in your new part. You'd have to go back to the beginning pretty much every time. It was an immensely laborious process. But he went on, you know, worked on this for months and eventually came up with it. And it only came out because Branson was looking for something to be the first record on the Virgin label. And of course, it was V2001, was Tubular Bells, which was the most left field thing you could possibly choose to mark the launch of your record company.
But also the most brilliant thing to mark out the character of Virgin Records, wasn't it?
I suppose it did.
Underground, you know, empire.
But it got a lot of notice early on. But the thing that really broke it was that William Friedkin at the time was making The Exorcist in the United States, and he had a score which had been commissioned for the film, and he didn't like it. And so the film was being done by Warner Brothers, and they said, well, Warner Brothers was obviously the same as had the record company, and Tubular Bells was one of the things that was supposed to come out on Warner Brothers in the States, but was just on a pile of stuff. Oh, try that. We're not going to put any of that out, you know. So William Friedkin just went through these records, played a bit of this white label, heard this bit at the beginning, thought, that'll do. And so that's how it ended up on the soundtrack of The Exorcist.
And that's what put it through the roof, wasn't it?
That's absolutely what put it through the roof. And that's why to this day, if you're of our kind of vintage, it always sounds faintly spooky.
It does, because you associate it subliminally. Exactly.
You subliminally associate
it. It is.
Yeah.
It's sinister, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it is now. It never was when it originally came out, but as soon as it had been associated with The Exorcist, it was, you know, and that's 50 years ago. So this year was 1973, 50 years ago was the year of kind of long form, wasn't it? Because it was Dark Side of the Moon at the same time. You know?
And also long form was the thing, wasn't it?
It was.
Long form movies. You think of 2001, you know, everything was about an hour longer than it should have been, you know.
Well, 2001
everything was epic.
It was interesting. I was listening to, you know, we were talking about that thing last week about how Rock Around the Clock ended up on the soundtrack of The Blackboard Jungle.
Yeah.
And I heard that on the same podcast where I heard once again the story of 2001, how the music got in 2001. Again, music was commissioned for 2001, but Kubrick wasn't convinced by it and just used to try playing the Blue Danube, you know, just off a record as he was editing certain sequences.
Yeah.
And decided that classical music was what worked best with it, you know. And so to the disgust of the guy who'd been off writing the music, writing the score, he chucked all that away and just used the classical music. And of course, the thing about 2001, again, going back to the point about long form, came out, got quite poor reviews, did nothing. But slowly what made it pick up was late night screenings for stoners who would stagger into the Electric Cinema.
Yeah, all-nighters, that's right.
All-nighters.
At the pub. Yes. With a load of ready rolled numbers.
Absolutely. And they just, those stoners, they like the idea of things that go on too long. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
No stoner ever goes, oh, we've had too much of this.
And they were quite often on a loop, those films. So if you fell asleep in the middle of it, you could wake up and it'll start again in about an hour's time.
Absolutely, you know? Absolutely.
Oh, brilliant.
So 50 years ago since long form. Thankfully, it's all over now.
The Word Podcast, prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
Beyoncé World Tour has started. Fantastic reviews. I mean, I bet it's absolutely thrilling, you know. It sounds incredible. But very interesting thing about the first gig, which I think was in Sweden, about how people had come from all over the world. Did you see that? People come from all over the world to go to this thing, dressed up in their rhinestone boots and their glittery cowboy hats, etc. And they'd come not just because the tickets were a bit cheaper, because I mean, obviously, even if the ticket's $146 or whatever, from 60, I think cheapest tickets were $63. You know, you still got to fly there and stay in a hotel and all that. That's not the point. The point is that these tours are so oversubscribed that people have flown from all over the world to Sweden because they've got more chance of buying a ticket than they have if they stay home in Florida or whatever. Which is amazing. If you think how much she's playing, I think she's doing something like 90 dates. She's doing 5, and possibly going to add another one at Tottenham Stadium in Britain, which is a 62,000 seater. So that's 320,000 tickets already.
I think all those people who've paid a fortune trooping up the Tottenham High Road, which is
the glamour.
No, the most enthralling entrance to a stadium in the country. But anyway, about five shows. Or probably
5
more.
shows. And I would imagine that they must make somewhere in the region of 8, 9, 10, probably 10 million a show.
Turnover.
You know, turnover, obviously. So that's about 900 to 100 million turnover. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Isn't it?
wonder if the promoters...
1,000 million, sorry, 1,000. Yeah.
Interesting point. Do the promoters participate in the sales of alcohol when they go to places like the Tottenham Stadium? Because the Tottenham Stadium famously has, it's a completely digital environment. You know, you can't use cash in the Tottenham Stadium at all.
Yeah.
And so it famously fills up the pints of lager from the bottom, you know, with incredible speed. You know, it's just amazing how its technology works there. But, normally promoters participate, artists participate in the royalties, in the income from that. I wonder if that applies with big stadiums like Spurs Stadium. I don't know if anybody knows.
Must, but my God, the profits, you know. But the other interesting thing is that all the reviews are talking about how the whole gist of what she does is a kind of celebration of black queer music, isn't it? It's LGBT. And this is the same Beyoncé, let's not forget, who in January this year went to Dubai and played a gig, wasn't it, for the opening of I can't remember, it was a hotel, I think, Atlantis Hotel, was it Atlantis Royal, that's right, in Dubai, and was paid, this is a good hourly rate, $24 million for a 1-hour show. That's my hourly rate, $24 million. But anyway, this is a regime that, where homosexuality is still illegal. You know, so much for black queer culture there. Yeah, that's incredible. There's a fantastic piece in the New Yorker at the moment about the disappearance of 2 daughters of the ruler of Dubai. Oh, yes.
Which is just hair-raising. Absolutely extraordinary. You know. But, money talks, certainly. And even to people like that, I mean, how much money do you want, really, you know? I mean, they just can't resist the next... You can't
resist it, can you?
The next payday.
You think, well, life would just be somehow better off if I had that 24 million in the bank. But, I mean, really, when you're making the kind of money they are, there's a point where you think you could stay home. Or the principals would win out or whatever. Extraordinary. It's an extraordinary thing.
So this week, I can't remember what the record was. I was listening to some record and I thought, my God, some songwriters are still rhyming the word arms with the word charms. You know, if I hold you in my arms and I feel your many charms.
Also, charms is such an outdated word, isn't it? Nobody would use the word charm.
Absolutely.
You might say something's charming, but you'd never say charm.
You wouldn't.
She has great charms.
It's a completely Edwardian kind of euphemism, isn't it? Doesn't it mean breasts? That's what you always take it to mean. But it's amazing how it just, I've got a bunch of them here. This is Marlene Dietrich, obviously Lily Marlene, which was a big Second World War hit, you know. Bugler tonight, don't play the call to arms. I want another evening with its charms. You know, Lord. Endless love, Lionel Richie, Diana Ross. I hold you close in my arms. I can't resist your charms.
All I have to do is dream, isn't it? When I want you in my arms. When I want you and all your charms.
Tom Waits, Jersey Girl. You know she thrills me with all her charms when I'm wrapped up in my baby's arms.
He's better than that, Tom Waits. He's better than that.
They can't resist it, can they? You know,
no doubt this Rasputin had lots of hidden charms, though he was a brute They fell into his arms. Boney M. There you go.
I've got pages of them in front of me.
Well, there's a site, isn't there, that has literally hundreds.
They absolutely, at least 500, you know.
And mentions all the other cliches, doesn't it? Fire, desire, ocean, emotion, free me, phone, alone, love above and heart apart. Those are apparently the most cliched rhymes.
Drive All Night by Bruce Springsteen. And to taste your tender charms, and I just want to sleep tonight again in your arms. That's terrible, isn't it?
That's rotten.
That's just absolutely rotten. Songwriters, surely you can do better than this. Goodness sake. You know, what is the need for artificial intelligence if people just got this kind of stuff rolling off them all the, I mean, they can... It's absolutely astonishing.
I found a site that told you that the commonest rhymes used by various artists. I thought it was really interesting. ABBA's were Light and Night.
Who's?
That's ABBA. Light and Night and Strong and Wrong. And Nirvana was Die and Sky and Dead and Head.
That's very
revealing, good. Isn't it? That's very good.
What's Steely Dan's? Have you got those there?
Oh, no, I haven't. No. Steely Dan.
Well,
don't tell me, did they do a Charms Arms? They probably do.
Oh, we shall have to
I shall look up Steely Dan. But there's some great ones. When you tweeted it, various people were talking about great rhymes of our time. And Museum and Just to See 'Em in Big Yellow Taxi is a fantastic rhyme, don't you think?
You see, and she gets away with that because she sings it herself and, you know, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like when she sings, Richard got married to a figure skater and he bought her a dishwasher and a coffee percolator. That's a lovely rhyme. I love that.
Somehow that's fine. Whereas, you know, I sat on the roof and kicked at the moss.
Some of these
verses, they got me quite cross. Doesn't really.
No. Somebody tweeted a lovely one, Jeanette by the Beat, which I don't think I remember. Did you see that one?
No, I didn't.
It's just a number of rhymes concentrated into a short period. It goes, all set, luncheonette, kitchenette to let, I bet, I get, hamburgerette. Again, we met in a laundrette, kissed beneath the air jet, no threat, no sweat, another one in the back of the net. When I met Jeanette, substitute Ronette. That's
very
just
good.
That's maximum rhymes, isn't it?
Well, that's all like it's too much munging business, isn't it? You know, Chuck Berry.
Yeah, it is.
Which again is subterranean home street blues, isn't it?
It is.
It's the same idea. You know.
Yeah, it is.
Let's just see how many of these I can pile into a line. So send us your nominations. We want to hear them.
My nomination, I have to say, I still think is from Cry Me a River. Don't you think that's the great one?
Go on.
You told me love was too plebeian. You told me you were through with me and
me.
Now you say you love me, just to say prove it's true. Isn't that great? Plebeian with through with me and
very good.
That's
very
a cool
good.
cut. Send them in. We want to know your favourite rhymes, or least favourite, actually.
This is a junction in the word podcast. It separates that bit from this next bit.
We're joined by Alex Gold. Hello, Alex.
Hello there. Hi.
We wanted your expert input on what was going on with The View this week. The View, a group I knew nothing about, really. But they had a reunion show, didn't they, in Manchester, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, they split up in 2017, I think. So it's quite a big deal for View supporters. They hadn't played for 6 years. Big reunion show.
Right.
And...
Go on, tell us what happened, Alex.
Well, they had what they, what they described as a brotherly bust-up that went a bit too far. I've had a look at the footage, and what I saw was the bass player giving the singer a little nudge or moving his mic, and then the singer went completely and utterly postal, threw his guitar down, kicked him in the head, and they couldn't
kicked him in the head?
Yeah.
Really? I've not seen this clip. I've only seen where he thumps him.
If I may say so, it was very Dundee, and the gig was stopped. And I mean, these are grown men in their late 30s.
Yes, this is not. That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah, they're not 17-year-olds, are they? Who've had 6 pints, and lost it. No, but that shows you how deep-seated and difficult this riff must be.
Well, apparently it all started when the singer Kyle Falconer said something along the lines of the bass player. The problem with him is he wants to sing all the songs, but he can't. Which might
He
be
said that on stage, right?
I think he said it on stage, which the bass player may well have taken offence to, but
Could possibly, yeah.
But I think if you take the context out of this, isn't that the point of bass players? They can't sing. That's why they're bass players, isn't it? You know,
That's absolute nonsense. What on earth are you talking about?
doesn't
That's a
necessarily-
ridiculous thing to say. There are millions of bass players who are the lead singers of their groups.
But, you know,
Tons of them, Magic.
but isn't that why the bass player of The View is the bass player of The View? Because he can't be the singer of The View. So
It
doesn't
might be the
necessarily-
case of The View, but I think you make that kind of generalisation about Paul McCartney and Sting, and can you? I don't
All
know.
right, there's an exception to every rule, but yeah, there seems to be a bit of a background to it anyway.
What I was intrigued by, and
I was intrigued by the one-time violence actually, because one thing I realised was that the Gallagher brothers, for example, would have never let it go. Their rage would have all been contained and handled viciously off stage. They would have never. There's no way of battering your bass player in public and making it look cool or glorious.
yeah,
It
No,
takes
obviously
all
lost
the
it.
excitement out of the. It takes all the danger out of it. In fact, it just looks a bit rubbish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you see somebody flapping about, kicking the bass player in the head, it doesn't look cool at all.
I tell you what it looks like, and I've been thinking about this a lot for the last few weeks. Actually, just walking down a road near where I live, and I saw something that I see all the time, and I've seen for years, and I've decided it's the single most annoying thing I ever see, which is if you're ever walking down your local high street or whatever, and you're behind a bunch of 13-year-old boys who are going to school, yes, which you do,
Yeah.
they find it impossible to walk along without one of them pushing some of the other ones. It's just a completely 13-year-old boy thing, isn't it? It's play fighting, pushing each other back and forth.
Weren't we probably the same?
Absolutely, of course we were.
Yeah.
Of course
We'd like to
we
think
were.
we're having intellectual debate, but I doubt it.
No, we're
remember
all the same, but it's just so annoying to look at, isn't
Yeah.
it? Really annoying. And that's what this was like, wasn't it? It was like a bunch of 13-year-olds trying to push each other into the road, kind of.
But that's so true. It's the main currency of young boys, isn't it? Is some kind of violence. It's the idea there's the gang of four, and there's always three ganging up on another one and thumping them, and then they joins up with the others and thumps them back. You know? But you're right. This is people just bad. But also the fact that they couldn't resolve it, that they had to call the gig off in the middle. So how do you feel if you've waited 6 years, travelled God knows how far, paid this amount of money, and it means something to you to see the group just stop in the middle of the show? Do you think it's extraordinary?
Well, it's probably the greatest publicity boon that they've had in years, actually.
Yeah, here we are talking about. I'd never heard of them before.
Well, I'd never heard of them at all.
But there's something about the psychology of being in a band that leaves gentlemen in a state of certain arrested development, isn't there?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
that wouldn't happen with a group of actors. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen at the Globe, would it?
No, do actors don't have punch-ups, I don't think.
Actors never, ever say anything controversial about anybody because at some stage they may finish out working with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas groups just tend to feel they're in a little gang and they can fire off shots across each other's bows, you know. And it's a totally...
But it made me think, is every group that we're looking at, and here I want your expert input, Alex, actually... You know, a drama, is it a situation waiting to kick off at any stage, you know? Is there always a resentment going between members of bands on stage?
I think frequently, because actually something that you said to me once, Dave, is that bands are full of men that don't talk to each other.
Right,
Yeah.
that's true.
And you know, the lion's share of bands get formed in adolescence, and your adolescence is probably when you have the most amount of beef with people in your entire life. You sort of sort it out after that, don't you? But you know, all this adolescent tetchiness just gets carried over because they don't talk about it ever. Yeah. And all these little issues mount up, you know, and eventually something's going to bubble out, and it's going to be 10,000 minor little stupid things that wouldn't bother anybody in the real actual world that we all live in, but in the band dimension,
Which is another reason Spinal Tap is so fantastically acute, isn't it? Because they've got that niggling thing all the way through. It's about
It could well be also that all of us have seen many gigs where there was something going on stage that we weren't aware of, but would have been really clear to the members of the band. You know, so-and-so's refusing to move over there or something, you know. He's taking his time over this. We've spoken about that and he's still not done anything about it. You know, there must be all kinds of passive-aggressive behavior going on the stage that we don't know about at all.
So the big game changer for me was the first time I did a theatre production, and having grown up exclusively playing in indie bands in that sort of circle, I had no idea really. And in theatre, you have note sessions most days, and you talk about the day before, anything that anybody's not happy with, and you just, even if it's something completely minor, everybody gets a chance to sort of let what they need to say out, and it's said and it's done, and you move on and you have a good show that night and you do it again the next day. There's no such thing for bands, and they're just not programmed.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
that's a great point. Because if there was a tradition whereby at the end of it you sat down and you analysed what you did, and you come to some kind of agreement about trying to change it, you would. But you're absolutely right. So anybody making any kind of comment at all is kind of out of line or being aggressive.
But very rarely does it spill over as badly as it spilled over with The View last week.
But all those shows usually kept going, didn't they? Didn't the Kingston Mick Avery once throw a cymbal at Dave Davis?
Oh, yeah.
Thought he killed him at Cardiff or something like that. But I think they carried on. I don't know. They soldiered on. They gave people their money's worth.
And they're probably all, to be fair, about 21 at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than the late 30s. You know?
Yeah.
This is different. So, any other business, Alex? What are you got? We've got to talk about June the 3rd. Our a word in the park. Go on. There's additional news there, isn't there, Alex?
There is. For the first time ever, we are hosting via Brighter Day Records. Joel Diath, who was on the Word in Your Attic a little while ago.
He was really good too. Really
Fantastic.
Interesting guy.
He is bringing along a selection of multi-genred, exciting vinyl, and setting up a pop-up record shop on site.
So we're going to have two shops.
You?
There is, so you can go along and have a browse, see what he's got, and you can also try to interest him in buying something from you as well, if you so wish, if you have something that you think is of merchantable quality.
So it's all that adds further stuff to do in the afternoon of June the 3rd in Holland Park, Word in the Park, where our guests are John Higgs, talking about the Beatles, James Bond of the British Psyche, Bob Stanley talking about the Bee Gees, Leslie Ann Jones talking about the Rolling Stones on the occasion of their 60th anniversary of the release of their first single, and Claire Grogan talking about being Claire Grogan.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
And we're emceeing the whole thing, and there'll be a stall there from West End Lane Books, selling books in which people will sign and so forth. And Joel Diath will also be there from Brighter Day Vinyl. Bars, lavatories you would take your mother to. Fabulous covered auditorium, keeps the rain off, lets the sunshine in.
Guaranteed good weather.
Be there.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.